going on YouTube? If you can see this, make sure to share it out. Give it a like so it gets out there past the censorship. All right, we are live. Perfect. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. As you know, we are currently overcoming extreme censorship. So if you want to support this show, please share episodes far and wide. But the best thing that you can do is to do 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Today's guest needs no introduction. He is the founder of the InPowerMovement. Welcome back to the show, my friend, Cal Washington.
Yeah, good to see you, Matt.
You too, man.
I'm glad to be here again.
Yeah, well, we're chatting and like working on some different things, and you're always coming up, and I feel like you're one of those people that I would just call, whenever the state of the world is getting worse and worse. I just like, man, I just need to call you. So it's cool to do it in a podcast format so people can kind of literally hear the questions that I would want to ask you and share them with other people. So there's so much going on in the world right now, and I know that you work hard, and I appreciate everything you're doing over at InPowerMovement. So I suggest people check that out and your other interviews. And so I was down in Ottawa and that whole thing transpired, and everybody's like looking for these solutions as we see the police brutality kind of go up and almost the government expose themselves for what they are, right? Waking up more people to say, hey, look, this is the state. This is one big mafia corporation, and they will send goons after you and beat you down. So on one hand, I thought that this is really good so people can know what they're dealing with. But on the other hand, it's really frightening. And we have 3 new bills coming in Canada. One of them is like for censorship. One of them is for, and I think it's even like a pre-crime scenario where like if they think you're going to commit some hate speech, they can come take you out. And they got one for universal basic income and then one for the digital ID. And for those who know what's going on, the digital ID is pretty frightening, right? They're lifting all the mandates so they can do the digital ID. So you're not going to register your car and all this stuff. So with all that being said, it can be a frightening scenario, especially if people don't understand the law. They want to take the masks off their kids and things like that. So as you've kind of seen the events in Ottawa happen and you see this legislation rolling out, how do you feel about all of that from just like a freedom perspective and somebody who really understands the law? Like I assume with all of the legislation that's an act or a statute, if you know your stuff, it's not going to affect you. But do you think if people don't know their stuff, it's going to affect them? Because I'm thinking about myself specifically with the hate speech or whatever, and I can't share this thing because it's it's censored, but it's I'm making myself a target, so to speak.
Yeah, if you don't understand the law or if you don't read it, you're going to go with the headline. I've noticed that lately, especially through the COVID thing, most of the stuff they pass is they put it out as a headline. But the headline doesn't tell you the whole story. You actually have to go and read the actual act, and that's when that'll tell you, what the exemptions are and all that. They don't put that in the headline, and most of us are just, we've been trained over a long period of time or whatever has happened, but we tend to just go with headlines. It's kind of like the drive-through thing. You want to just drive through, get something to eat and move on, right? Spare me all the details. So they hide the details in it's in plain view, but you gotta go and read it. And then the more you understand acts, especially here in Canada, unless they've been given royal assent, there's nothing there. It's fake, if you want to put it that way.
And with the royal assent, I heard you on an episode with Beth Martins talking to Alphonse, and I think that's where you're saying that royal assent hasn't happened in a long time. Something Canada goes back. We're the Hudson's Bay. Yeah, maybe you can clear that whole thing out right now, right? So how is Canada going? It's a Hudson's Bay Charter. It's not the Charter of Rights. That's a trick. It's the Bill of Rights. Can you kind of explain that bag of worms?
Well, the issue that we have here is in 1670, King Charles, I think it was the second, gave his cousin a charter which allowed him to run a full monopoly. But that monopoly, that's one thing, but the monopoly looked like a country because he was able to create his own laws and enforce them and had courts army, navy, forts with cannons and all that kind of stuff. So it was really, you couldn't distinguish it from a country as far as how it operated, because it had that kind of power to create laws and enforce them. So that ran for about 200 years, and that's a thing, you know, when you think about it. Everybody looks at the Hudson Bay Company like it was some historical thing, but it was actually pretty oppressive, and it ran for 200 years, longer than the iteration that we have now, you know, called Canada. We haven't hit 200 years yet, so it ran longer. And everybody knew it was a corporation. That's the thing. So, you know, there was some dissension, and people would shoot at them, and, you know, like try and fight this thing. But there was a charter signed by a king where they were allowed to do it. Now, part of the making of the laws, and you got to read the charter so you understand this, they couldn't make laws that were repugnant to the common law. So there was a limit to what they could do. Now, they did that anyway because they just got away with it, but they legally couldn't do it. So because there was so much dissension, some people were benefiting from the Hudson Bay Company, and so they were, you know, all for it. Others were oppressed by it. And so to get rid of that whole thing that everybody knew it was a corporation, because it was not hidden at that time. Like, everybody knew it was called the Hudson Bay Company. That wasn't its real name, but everybody called it that. And so you had no recourse. You couldn't do any trading without the forts. You couldn't deal with the native people directly. You couldn't take any resources out of here without it going through the forts, and they took their cut. So they owned everything. It was a full-on monopoly. And if you were caught, shipping goods out or dealing with the natives directly, you know, there was fines and jail and all that stuff. So it's very similar to what we have now. So the Queen Victoria created the Dominion, because there was Rupert's Land, which was the Hudson Bay Company land, and now they went way past where they were supposed to. So there was a lot of problems with the whole thing, because, you know, this all happened historically, and you can't fix some of this stuff. So Hudson Bay Company was not supposed to be out here in BC at all. And this was all native land, and it still is, but they were here, and they had forts all over the place. So, you know, so you got all this fraudulent behavior going way back, and you can't fix it at this point. So in 1867, the Queen Victoria formed a dominion out of there were 4 provinces and then Rupert's Land. So you had Upper and Lower Canada, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. They were actual provinces, similar to the colonies that were in the United States. So they were British. There was the whole Louisiana that went up in there too. So there's a lot of history and discord in that, especially in the area of where Quebec and Ontario are now, because it was originally French. So there was a very French culture there. And then they, you know, divvied it up, and this is Canada, this is the United States, but the French people were all there. And so that's where all that comes from, is just traditionally they've been there. So they formed the Dominion out of the 4 provinces. And one of the reasons, if you read the British North America Act, which formed the Dominion, one of the reasons to form the act was to get other territories joined into this Dominion, namely Rupert's Land. The Hudson Bay Company had a large tract of land. And then once they formed the Dominion, the very next year, she passed the Rupert's Land Act, which was the terms of surrender of that document that was written in 1670, which gave whoever has it the power to run a corporation as if it was a country, because you had all these mechanisms that were in there. And they couldn't get it back. They couldn't revoke it because it was signed by a king, and it was a perpetual succession document. So it had no end to it. Literally, it passed on forever. Signed by a king, you can't do anything about that once it's signed by a king. Not even a following king can remove it. So the only thing they could do was get them to voluntarily surrender it. So the Rupert's Land Act, which is right after the Dominion formed in 1867, 1868, first order of business, let's get that charter. So they drew up the terms of surrender in that act, and the terms of surrender was that the document had to be surrendered to Victoria, her successors and heirs, officially, and there was a deed of surrender and all that. It took a couple of years to actually surrender it because there was an uprising, because some people, they didn't inform people, number one. And then when they found out that everything's switching, like, no, this is going to affect my situation here. So there was an uprising. And so it took about 2 years to actually surrender it. So they surrendered in 1870. Now that document is now in the hands of Victoria. Then in 1893, she repealed the BNA Act by removing the enacting clause in Section 2, mostly. That was repealed by an act called the Statute Law Revision Act. And if you look that up, every act has the reasons for the act. And the reason for that act was to repeal acts. That's its sole purpose. So, and it says, to repeal old and redundant and acts that have, sort of haven't been useful. Well, on Schedule 1, the British North America Act, which was only about 26 years old, was on Schedule 1, like day one. And if you look at the history, they hadn't even given royal assent to the Statute Law Revision Act, but they were already like moving and repealing. So British North America Act was on Schedule 1, which removed the act. And then now the only thing you have left is that Hudson Bay Charter, which doesn't expire. But now she's got it. And so that passed to whomever she passed it to. And, there's no way to know exactly who that was, but it would stand to reason that Elizabeth has it. It would just pass to her, to her son and then to her granddaughter. So Elizabeth now has a document that allows a monopoly to run as if it was a country. You would not tell the difference. And if you didn't know that the British North America Act was repealed, you wouldn't see the difference. Like nothing would really change except legally, I guess, that they're now back operating under the Hudson Bay Charter and not under the Dominion. So that's what we had. Now in 82, Trudeau tried to fix this, the old Pierre Trudeau, the first one. And so they wanted to revive that British North America Act, but they couldn't because it had been repealed by a queen. So they changed the name to the Constitution Act. And they've been backdating that name all the way to 1867. But there's no such thing as the Constitution Act 1867. It was the British North America Act 1867. So they're trying to backdate what happened in 82. The whole problem with that is in 82, they couldn't pass this act because the document itself created Parliament. So the British North America Act creates Parliament, creates the legislatures and the courts. So if that's gone, those things don't exist, even though they've been running for a little over 100 years. But in order to fix this, they needed to kind of backdate everything just to try and wash it over, instead of going to the people and saying, hey, we have this problem. We need to actually form a country. And there was, the Westminster Act of Westminster allowed that to happen, but we never did it that way. They tried to pretend, just tried to whitewash it, clean it up. And it didn't work because the only way to pass it was to have the Queen come over with a proclamation, because there's no Parliament, there's nothing to pass it. They didn't want to have it passed in the UK like the British North America was, because that's part of the problem. They wanted to have it here, but there was no politic body to actually do it legally. They didn't exist. They existed in fact, like de facto, but there was no document creating Parliament because it had been repealed in 1893. So they're trying to revive that without anybody knowing. But the Queen said, yeah, you can have your country and we'll revive this document, but you've got to get Quebec to sign off on a language issue. And there's the problem. It's right in her proclamation, subject to Section 59, then this thing will pass. And it's been 40 years and they still have not got Quebec to sign off. And once Quebec does sign off, which they won't, then there has to be Section 59 removed from the act renumbered, and there has to be another proclamation. And neither of those things have happened. So we're still stuck with the Hudson Bay Charter.
Wow. Well, Cal, it's safe to say that I never got that lesson in school.
No.
and I barely followed along. But so as I understand what you just said, Canada is still basically run by the Hudson's Bay Corporation, like legally, because we know, and you can correct me, but I was just going to say, like, Canada is registered on Dun and Bradstreet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the United States, same with Ontario. So they're all corporations. Australia is registered as well, and I believe the United States is registered. And then London, England. There's London that's got its own parliament, so that's a weird thing too, right? Like the London City Center's got its own. Is it London that's got its own little animal there? So you got all these weird things. But so what you're sharing, to most people don't realize that countries are corporations, but Canada is almost even worse off because we're like still the charter, like that's how we're operating, is Hudson's Bay Charter. So where does that leave us with preserving our rights, or people go in and say this is a charter of rights and freedoms, and then they get kicked out of court? Or in the United States, when you did that great presentation at Red Pill, you talk about going in, you think you're in the United States of America, but you're in the corporation, you're not in the republic. So it's just like, why the heck are all these friggin' things there? It's like one layer after another. So is there a simple way for us to have, I guess the document sounds stupid because we get our rights inherent from the creator, but from a Canadian perspective, or even other countries, is there a founding document that we can rely on for protection?
Well, the Hudson Bay Charter, they can't pass any laws that are repugnant to the common law. That's the remedy, but nobody knows about the Hudson Bay Charter and nobody's talking about it.
Right.
They're pretending like, oh no, we have a country. But the minute they, when it's put to them, they don't have an answer for that. And so that's why all their acts, if they're repugnant to the common law, they can't get royal assent. So this is why people are wondering, why aren't they giving royal assent? They can't, because they're operating under the, in my opinion, they're operating under the Hudson Bay Charter, and certain laws can't be given royal assent because they're repugnant to the common law. So if we believe these acts, then they work. So it's kind of like a Wizard of Oz thing. The wizard, right. The wizard kept saying, oh, you got to go and get the ruby slippers. You got to do this, run up and down the yellow brick road. But the whole time it was just a guy behind a curtain. Right. But everybody believed that there was this wizard.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many questions I want to ask you, because there's like all the law rabbit hole stuff and just unpacking like where we are, and one of the things, I don't know if I sent you this, I sent you one video for sure, but one of them I wanted to talk to you about today is I came across this video, and it's a hypothesis of the Bible and the 1,000 years. So how you came on and you're talking about I think it was the book of Job, and it's like this court case with Satan and God, and he's walking back and forth in the ends of the earth, and it sounds like a prison. Now in the Bible, and I believe the book of Enoch, and this is what this presenter brings up, is that Satan was jailed, or what's the word they use for jail and Satan, like enclosed or cast down?
Remanded. Yeah, he was cast down down,
right? So then the suggestion of this is there was 1,000 years of potentially Jesus as king, and then she's presenting how potentially it was either that him as the king ruling, and that's where Tartaria architecture came from. Have you ever heard about the Tartaria thing yet?
Yeah.
So this is all the, we've got Egypt, and everybody can look at Egypt and the pyramids, and you can look at Angkor Wat, and you look at all these different places in Mexico and say, holy crap, we don't know how these are built. These are spectacular, and there's a lot of mystery. But most people don't think about the cathedrals and all these other incredible buildings that, like, when you look at the Tartaria stuff, it makes sense. And it's also interesting to see the frequency, because if they were frequency generators or energy generators, because there's perfect cymatics in the window. So if you were going to run energy through them, you can see the coherence. Like we know that from cymatics and the tuning, and then it's the exact same thing in their window. So this stuff is incredible, and it's never going to fall down. And so what her hypothesis was that Tartarian kingdom was built the 1,000 years where Satan or whatever it was cast down. And then the book goes on to say, for whatever friggin' reason, Satan must be loosed a little season. Now, in infinity, or in God's eyes, or in something beyond human, because I think about 100 years, but in the Bible they had people living to 900 years. A little season could be a few hundred to and he can go around and deceive, right? That's what he's allowed to do, deceive and all this stuff. And you look at our world, and it's almost the culmination of that. It's like unveiling of how awful and destructive and deceptive this system is. Nothing is as it seems, right? You think your toothpaste is good. Nope, there's fluoride in it. You think, you know what I mean? You think this protein bar is going to help you. Nope, there's all kinds of crap in there. You know, you can have this egg. Nope, they genetically modified that egg. Oh, here's a seed. They frigged that up. It's like, why can't anything be what it's supposed to be? Why is everything a friggin' hazard? And so, so when I don't know if you've heard that theory before, but I thought that was fascinating. And so I'm just curious if you've heard it or what you think of that idea.
Yeah, I think there's some merit to it. I think because I knew that passage from a long time ago that Satan would be released again. So he was tied up. So he was cast down a long time ago. Because there was this coup in heaven, wherever that is, because he wanted to be God, and he had a third of the angels go along with this plan. So they were literally remanded into this thing called Earth. It's an enclosure, you know, and you'll notice any references to Earth, it's in Earth, not on Earth. And we tend to say on Earth because we think it's a planet amongst many planets, and you're on this thing. No, you're actually in something, and we don't know the full scope of what that means. There's a description in the Bible, but you don't get the full picture of what's actually happening here. But it is an enclosed system, so it's like a matrix, for lack of a better word. But they can't get out except to appear in court. Just like when I was remanded, I was held without bail for 60 days. The only time I could get out was to go to court, and then I was put back in. And that's what I saw after I went through that experience. When I read Job again, I went, hey, he's remanded. Because he said, where have you been? I've been walking in Earth, back and forth in it. So he hits the wall, hits the wall, hits the wall. And if you look at some of the stuff that's, some of these structures and this whole NASA thing, they've been trying to get out for a long time.
Right. And that kind of opens up the mystery of Antarctica and Admiral Byrd, right? His interviews, if they are true anyway, he says that, there's a firmament, right? And I saw this image, and you never know with anything nowadays, like if it's true or made up or someone just photoshopped it or whatever, but it was this old encyclopedia, and it showed that they actually measured the firmament. It's like, we found it at this side, and that was Operation Fishbowl. And I believe there was another one try to like explode it. And there's another video that's online that's pretty popular that I just reshared, was these people made an amateur missile, and it shoots up really high, and then all of a sudden it looks like it gets stuck. Now, again, it could be anything, but when you start to piece all these other things together, like the Antarctica thing, for example, why can't you go there? Right? Why did all of a sudden after World War II, everybody signed a treaty that says you can't go there? And I don't know if this is true. This came from Sam Tripoli, but there's supposed to be a place called Schwabenland there, and some other stuff. And so do you know anything about Antarctica or inner Earth? Have you ever came across anything like that?
No, I do know that they're they went under. So there's a lot of tunnel systems and that kind of thing, like very elaborate. But I don't know much about Antarctica, but a lot of this starts to make sense. It doesn't mean it's true, but you can see that these hypotheses are plausible. And the fact that we can't go to Antarctica, why not? And it's you can't fly over it. Just a bunch of stuff. So it's a lot of circumstantial things, but when you have enough of them, you start to question the narrative. And are we on a globe? Is this a planet? Are there other planets out there? Is there space? Are we just looking at something filmed on the firmament?
Oh, damn. It could be. Yeah. Now I never thought about that one. I saw there's a documentary series from EWARNON. It's EWARNON, I believe. And he does the lost history of flat earth and then what on earth happened. And I believe it's on lost history of flat earth. He talks actually less about flat earth, but more about Tartaria and some of those older deceptions that are there. And whether you believe it's flat or round, it doesn't matter. It's like, what I learned about deception was great. I learned so much about NASA and just more lies and more lies and more lies. But one of the interesting things he shares is that the moon, right? He shows the moon and you know how you got that face on the moon, it never changes. Well, they lay it flat on the earth and it matches a flat earth map, but there's also these other continents. And so I had heard from, you go into things like the Anunnaki and the Sumerian tablets and all these kind of ancient histories, and you go to Egypt and you see all kinds of weirdness down there. Well, if we can't leave, and that's actually one of my Native American elders said that too. He said, nobody can leave here. So there's a lot of species here that are not just human. You're not the apex. That was his thing. He's like, you're not the apex. There's other things here, but nobody can leave. And then when I saw that drop down, I was like, oh, well, that would make more sense to me, less than like a spinning ball in outer space going to infinity, which it could be, I don't know, but it seems when you look into it a little less likely than if you are stuck in a dome and there's extra space, like another continent like Canada. And I used to think as a kid, like maybe there's a mystery island nobody found yet. So maybe we're not allowed to go to those places. Like in Canada, right? We're apparently not even allowed to leave our own country. So it wouldn't be that far off to say there's these other continents or other places that no one is allowed to go to unless you're the super elite in the know. And so do you want to comment on that, or do you want me to ask you a question?
No, yeah, you can ask a question, either one. Yeah, I fully agree. And, going back to that whole release thing, when I first saw that, as years ago, that Satan would be released right after a 1,000-year millennium of peace and all that, I thought, well, how are these people get deceived if they went through that? And then when I saw the Tartaria stuff, I say, oh, they reset it. They kind of had to start again in order to make it fair. Otherwise, if you had gone through that, you would know that you're being deceived because you would have like a basis of truth. So it started to make sense that, yeah, they had to reset something in order for Lucifer to have a fair shot at his claim again. But
right. So that was where you talked about in a previous podcast, which is so mind-blowing, is this theory that Earth in itself, everyone here, is playing out the adjudication, is that the right word, between God and Satan. And so Satan is making the claim that he is God and he rules this place. So we all get free will, and the creator put him and all of us to make the choice. Are we going to choose evil and Satan, or are we going to choose God, the creator? Is that right? It in a nutshell?
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's right on page 1, because the creation story, you'll notice, God said, let there be light, and God's, created all these things over 6 days with no interaction with any other being. On the 6th day, there's an interaction. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness. So there's a discussion about it. So and nothing's said about what that discussion is about, but there is a discussion. So there's an agreement between at least 2 consciousnesses. We're going to make man in our image and in our likeness. And if you look up the word likeness, it's in our stead. Like I'm going to put myself here in the form of man. And likeness has a colon. So the colon, anything that comes after that is more explanation of what came before. So it's right after likeness. And then it says, we will give them dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that creeps upon the land. So that's the part of the agreement, is to give this being called man that kind of authority as if he was God in a smaller controlled environment, not the fullness of God, but like we'll create man, give him dominion as if like I do in the whole universe, but it'll be contained in here, and then we'll see what happens. So then the very next verse, because a lot of people think that this was the Elohim or something that God in a bunch of forms, but actually it's not. It's a discussion, and then the very next verse it says God created man in his. So there's a discussion first, then the actual creation, and he does it again by himself, like he did with light and all the rest of it. But there's a discussion first.
Right. And so, it feels like when you say it like that, I feel like I'm a bit of a pawn in the game. So like, and so God is like created like little bits of himself in this. And so we get to make that choice. And will there be repercussions for each individual soul or consciousness for the choice they make when they talk about heaven and hell and things like that?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say you're a pawn. I would say more like you're the queen. I don't mean that, but you're a more powerful piece than the pawn. So as far as chess goes.
Right. And so, again, with this, like some of the concerns I have with the Bible and deception. So there's a couple of things I want to go on. Like one of them is the Enoch and the Watchers and the book, or the book of Enoch, the story of Noah and the fallen watchers, and how they even interpret them as these taller beings, right? And talk about giants and things like that. That's one thing I'm interested in. And one of the fears that I have, going into the Bible and in any of these ancient texts, is it seems that these rulers have manipulated everything. And so one of the other videos I sent, I don't know if you had time to watch it, was another hypothesis that the agreements that we have now, all law comes from tribal law, from the Native Americans, and it had to not be repugnant to any of the treaties they signed. And the Native Americans I studied with, they said all of the treaties have been broken. And then you've got the Bible. So one of the things that worries me about any book is that could that have just been created? Like, how does it know the end of the story? Like where is this headed? Could that be like another deception? And in your view, who wrote the Bible? I guess, like, tell me what like who wrote it, because it's got the names there. Then you got the Council of Nicaea, and then you've got some of the stuff that people say, and then you've got okay, here's the end. And this is a ridiculous rant for people listening. This is me trying to figure this out. Then you've got like the end of the story, right, where it says this is what's going to happen, and we've got the tribulation, which it feels like we're going through now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we make that choice, let's say we're in alignment with God, the Creator, Jesus, or whatever that is, or whoever that might be, Jesus as a real person. That's another question. Do you think Jesus walked the earth, or do you think he was something else? And then you just vanish, right? They talk about the disappearing of certain people. And then what happens is people on this earth are basically ruled in this horrible satanic Babylon system for a period of time. You know what I'm talking about? So there's a lot there that I'm trying to, because I had a really deep discussion with a friend of mine who's really Christian, and she kind of shared that if you don't get taken away in this round, it's going to be a horrible choice moving, like if you're left behind. And I was like, oh shoot, could I get left behind? Like, I definitely don't want that.
No, you don't. Yeah, I mean, these things are all written in the Bible. It's hard to say, what they mean, because a lot of things I knew, how I understood things before, everything's changed. Not everything, but the order of things, etc. But one of the things it does say is there will be two in a field, and one will be taken and one will be left. And there's more along with that. But it doesn't say which one is taken and which one is left. So when you start to get into this quantum physics and everything, and the structure of this whole thing, and the Bible says there will be a new heaven and new earth. and the old one will pass away. So we could literally be going through a split of reality, and some will continue with this reality, and some will go to a new one. But those two ladies in the field, to each one of them, it will look like the other disappeared. That's what I think is going to happen. And and you can see it. You can see this separation sort of thing happening, and certain ones really want to hang on to this reality. They're really clinging to it, and others are like just appalled by everything that's going on and want to move on. So hopefully, there'll be a great awakening just before that event happens, and a lot of people will switch sides. That's what I think will happen, because there's also parables about the feast was ready, and all the people who were invited didn't come, and so the God said, just go get everybody off the street, go get all the street people and bring them to the big party. And this was right at the last minute.
I love that. And there's another story in the Bible, and you're one of those people that said at the beginning that when we were doing the Law Summit, some of the other ones saying everybody has an opinion on the Bible, but nobody's read it, right? I remember seeing bits of it, and I was like, all right, because I grew up Christian and just was like, nah, this doesn't make any sense. Like I was very spiritual, and I was like, I get this, but I don't understand, like, if God was good, why would he make people burn in hell forever? And, some of these things like didn't make a lot of sense. So I kind of like rejected that and went more the Eastern philosophy where people didn't burn in hell for their consequences. But now reading the Bible, and knowing other people too, where they don't go to church, they, just study the Bible and follow that. And I also, my neighbors are really religious and they go to church often, but I was talking to them and they're really great people. And they just say, we don't ever believe everything the pastor says to us. It's just like, this is their interpretation, but there's a lot of goodness, and it's a model for life. You know what I mean? We look at these spirituality books and these self-help books. Well, it's a very good model. And when I look through that, it's kind of good versus evil. You don't need to be, what's that word? Very pious about it, unless that's the path that you want to go. You can be very strict and intense about it if you wish. And so there's just a lot of value to reading that book. And it's like this adjudication between more, good and evil, like you said, and everything is about law and commerce and spirituality. And so one of the questions I want to ask is like, looking at law again, we got the Black's Law Dictionary where you have a word, you think it means something, and it doesn't mean that. Then you've got in the Bible, the all caps, which is sign language, right? God in all caps. It removes it from the Bible, which is something that you spoke about, and also Romley Stewart. So that's a bummer. And so when I talk to the Native Americans, they talk about creator and great spirit. And this is what this other guy's suggestion on this thing that I sent, get your 2 cents on. He was saying that there's older translations of the creator, which is more, I guess, accurate. I forget the synonyms he used for it. And then God was not as complete. And so my fear is like going down and supporting something that's not honest, not true, not the one true creator, not the one true God, not the one true life, And when I went to the Parliament of World Religions, there's 220. And some people are very adamant, this is the way, this is the way. And, I'm like, I hear you. And how do we not get lost in deception, I guess, and find a true spiritual path and connection with the true creator, that you're like, oh, I am in that light. I'm in that spirit of creation and life.
Well, my theory on it, because I went through that sort of, searching as well, and like looking at other philosophies, etc. And, if God put us in this position, he would have to give us something that we could actually go, that there's the truth, and we would be able to hang on to it. Because of just what you said, there's going to be so much misinformation. So there would have to be something here, like a Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb, at least, in order for God to get himself out of this. Like, he's just not going to leave it in total darkness or total ignorance. And he would have to, in order for God to know that it was himself leading that, just what you said, like this exact question would come up. He would have to think, okay, I'm going to have to leave something that I would be able to recognize as being coming from, Almighty. And when you look at the Bible, it has all of that. Yes, it's been altered. Yes, stuff's been added, stuff's been taken out, but it's all by agreement, and there's enough there. And when you start to study the original languages and the letters and the complexity of the message through there and some of the codes that are in there, it just becomes unmistakable. No man wrote this book. Like it's not possible. So who wrote it? And because it's even over, different authors, et cetera, and the codes and the message is always the same. So once you start to study the book more objectively, like just as a document, and what's going on with this, and you start to see some of these codes and how complex they are, you go, okay, I think this is the thing. If I was God, I would put this in here so that I would recognize it if I was lost. And so the Bible has all that.
Oh, I see. That made sense for me. It made sense in a way that you would see like a level of mastery, and I kind of equate this to martial arts and the law and even, church. Like, you can learn martial arts from any variety of teachers. The punching and kicking and throws, they're kind of a universal knowledge, but how would that person share that knowledge with you, and for what use? Like Karate Kid or whatever, for a stupid example. But you can also understand levels of mastery and intelligence. Even when I hear certain people speak, I can hear that, as I've gotten older. Right, when I was younger, I'm afraid to listen to podcast number 20 or something, all kind of stupid crap that I want. But that's a part of, that I would say, and I'm probably going to say and believe in lots of stupid stuff now, but it's an evolution, right? Like I'm still a child. It says you're a child in the eyes of God. And so one of the things I know is I do know nothing, right? But I've kind of really thought about that, but I do know my intention. And that's what one of my native teachers told me once, when I felt like I had followed somebody for a while and I was deceived, and, maybe they was true, but I felt like I might've been deceived. And he said, the Creator knows your intention. For whatever reason for you to be led there, you followed the signs to take you there, but there was a lot of learning in that. And that's got to be okay for us to kind of, make those mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Like my child messes up, she's 2, but I try to talk to her like an adult sometimes, and gotta remember she's only 2. And so I'm curious, in your opinion, do you think Jesus was a real person? And then the books, it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you got the old one and the new one. Or do you distinguish old and new in any way? And Jesus as a man, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he was here. Too much happened. There's too many accounts. And then there's even some hidden accounts that he came over to North America. There's accounts of natives and people in different parts of the world other than, around Israel.
What is it? I'd heard that. I think even the natives actually told me about that, because they believed in Jesus, the ones that I spoke with, and a lot of the other religions too believe in Jesus as well as one of the masters. And after he was revived, he traveled around, and I even saw one account where he actually didn't die, and it was like, who knows? I don't know. I've heard a lot of different theories, and I have no idea exactly what it is, but like the message of it and the book that was left in the war, in the education between good and evil. So continue on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe he was a historical, it would have to be that way because there had to be the death in order to satisfy the system inside here. It's part of the agreement because there's because of this old claim, you got to sort of get everything as far as Earth goes. That's the basis of why Earth is here, is because of this unresolved claim of who is God. So if you put everything on top of that as the basis of what's really going on here, then everything starts to make sense. And so part of all of Lucifer's claim, God has to be fair to that claim. And so there's a lot of things that don't seem correct, but he's also trying to make it okay for Lucifer. You understand that? Like he doesn't treat Lucifer as an enemy. It's the other way around. I mean, he is an enemy because he's constantly attacking God, but God does not look at him that way. He would like it if he, just got back to, get in line kind of thing. So, but that's not happening. So, but there's always this ongoing court case, and you can see it, a piece of it in Job where he appeals things. There's an appeal, so he always asks for more, moves the court, motions the court, and even God said, "You moved me to go against Job," and there was always limits to that. So you can see this ongoing court case, and he's the accuser of the brethren day and night, and that's the mechanism that's the thing that's always in play here, is this ongoing court case about that claim. So he's accusing all of the ones that are here in God's stead of, they're following me, or they're doing this, or they're doing that. So Jesus had to come and actually pay for all that, if you want to put it that way, to satisfy the system. So that's why the death had to be a real death.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a really interesting way to put it. And one of the thoughts that I had is that, as I understand evil on this planet, which I've studied a long time, because when I was younger, I was like, why don't we have food for everybody? Why aren't we moving into like Atlantis and peace and free energy and all these wonderful things? And I look and it's holy, this entire nasty system is corrupt to its core, and it's Luciferian and satanic for the reason that the people architecting it will take everything from you with no compassion.
Yes.
Good people do not think like that, right?
No.
They think about, to be a good neighbor, and you look at the Bible, and that's kind of what it teaches, is to be, a good neighbor, and, it's good versus evil type of scenario. And so from what I understand of these evil people, they do worship Lucifer. They have statues, they do these rituals. And so, and they won't swear in the Bible. I've seen videos where they try and get them to swear in the Bible. If you guys want to see something trippy, look at the Bible that Joe Biden swears on when he gets into office. It's a satanic Bible. Someone found, I don't know exactly for sure, but it sure looks like the Bible that the person presented. And so why would they be worshiping Satan or Lucifer? And why would they be trying to remove him, or remove God from all things, remove it from everywhere, including schools? And you look at like the degeneration of just the last 5 years, or even the last 2 from COVID, how bad it's been, this corrupt moral compass that people have, and the anger and the hate and the projection and they're getting so far separated from reality. Right. And then a lot of it's coming from these screens, and, that's almost a virus, is like implanting these ideas. But then because you're a little bit confused and afraid, or for whatever reasons that you're taking in this information, you then, through your own choices and your own free will, start tarnishing your own soul. Yes. And that's one of the things I've kind of said, is like, people can deceive you, and they can manipulate you, and they can do everything that they can to get you off your path, but you're the only one who can harm your soul through the choices that you make. And so I'm just curious if you want to comment on that. It's just something I think it's really ramped up in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and you can see the divide. Like, people are actually, whether they understand it or not, they're actually following a satanic leading, if you want to put it that way, and they are taking on that kind of, a lot of those traits. And this is what happens. And there, people at the top know what I'm talking about. They know there's a Lucifer, they know there's a God, and they know that there's this ongoing claim. They think they can win. They actually believe that. So a third of the angels believed it in the beginning, which is really mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah. Now, if you look at the movie Noah's Ark, it comes down, the angels are different beings, and there's different ideas about angels, right? Giants, aliens, things like that. It talks about watchers, and they look different. They don't look like they're human. They look like a different type of species. What's your thoughts on that idea of like what an angel might be, or what are they referring to in those old books? And did those synergize with stuff like the Sumerian tablets and people talking about aliens and all these different races? Now, I think if they are here, then they would be on extra terra, over there, like. But then it kind of conflicts with the Bible, because the Bible says that we're the apex, or is that not true?
Well, we are in here to a certain degree. Like the angels are still like, consider this as a small reality, Earth, and then there's a bigger reality. So, and these interact. So in here we have the dominion. So over the air, sea, and land jurisdictions. That's how what we were given as we were made. There was already beings here. That's the thing that people miss. So, and we got dominion over them, and some of them hated that. So, like man from like Adam is fairly recent as far as the whole creation. This took a long period of time, and those angels were put here as a remand. So it was made the jail was made nice for us to come here, and you can see that in the creation story. So that we had everything was supplied, and you can see the hand of God in here. So you have that going on, so you can see God even if you don't understand or read the Bible or anything. You can see that there is a creator, there's a synergy to everything, and then there's this overlay inside of that, with mostly in our heads, like they told us things and then we believe them. And so the idea of countries don't exist. We're the only ones only species that recognize countries. Birds and animals, they just walk across the border like it's not there, because it's not. And we believe there's a border because we were told that from birth, but it's not really there. It's a construct. It's a fabrication, like the Wizard of Oz. And same thing with money. Money doesn't exist here. We're the only species that pays to live here, and all the other ones, oh yeah, I don't know what I'm going to eat today, but something's going to happen, and food just is supplied to every species. And but we have to pay. We have to go to work to get these things called dollars in order to pay to get the apple off the tree, where it grows for free.
Yeah, it's so unbelievable. And again, with one of my elders, they were talking about that when the borders came up, like they were just walking back and forth, and if you're like, you got one family that's a couple miles away and it just happens to be at that border crossing, maybe Maine and Nova Scotia or Quebec or wherever it is, it's just completely absurd. Another question I wanted to pose is the idea, and I'm going through the book of Enoch right now as well, and it talks about like these entities, or I don't know, they're demons or entities, or not so much demons, but like I think it called it disembodied spirits, right? And it kind of said they could influence and potentially even take over the body. And so one of the fascinating things I consider is that we only see like the smallest bit of the light spectrum, right? That's all we can see, the smallest tiny bit. We can only hear the smallest tiny bit of the sound spectrum. So there could be all of this life and influence that we are completely oblivious to. And so I'm just curious on your thoughts, because that goes into, there's another story. I don't know if it's the Anunnaki one, but it talks about, they sent down these beings or whatever. And, are these, they're here anyway, these little influential disincarnate beings. And so that seems like a frightening thing to me, where I'm like, okay, this little thing can influence me. What do you think about that? And how do I make sure that that thing is not influencing me or anyone I love, like exorcism and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's all very real. Like if you read the Jesus stories, like the Gospels and even into Acts a bit, you'll see that he performed a lot of miracles, but the thing he did most was cast out demons. So that it's a thing, and people try and pretend like it's fairy tale or just don't want to think about it. But it's very real, and those are the spirits that were cast here before man showed up. So they were here already, and we got dominion. and they can incarnate into bodies, especially if you're not aware of something you're doing. You can open up a door, for lack of a better word, for that to happen. And then some of this stuff can come down genetically as well. So there's curses, if you want to put it that way, that pass down genetically. And there's remedy in the Bible, like Ephesians 6 talks about, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with spirits. And so it tells you, there's armor you can have, but you got to put it on. And there's things that you can do to bind the strong man and to cast these things out. So, and if you read Acts, you'll see that after the death and resurrection, then the 12 apostles, and then, the group that kind of formed the original church, they were all doing those things as well. So
do you have any verses or techniques in mind for that? Like, because I remember, in my Burning Man days where I was like all in on the stuff, right? I put like the crystals on. I'm like, all right, cool. Do my little shield meditation and stuff, and everything out there, because it's all out there. And it could be, and maybe I was doing it in a proper way or in a ridiculous way. I don't know, but I think there's something to do with intent. But maybe there's like a simple prayer. And that's one thing I've always resonated with. Whatever I was doing, I was intending it, because I knew visualization and intention works from sport. And I know it works from martial arts. And I know it works at the highest form, because if you're going to be a master, especially like samurai, and you study those guys, they were going to, if you frigged up, you died. So the second that your spirit, and that's what you're fighting with. You're not fighting with your body. You're always fighting with your spirit. And so the second that thing gets off kilter, you're done. And so always moving out in the world doing that. I remember, if I have fear, I'll just say, put on the whole armor of God. So anyway, that's a side rant to ask the question of, do you know of any specific verses or techniques that someone could do that for themselves? Because I've heard someone say, oh, there's an entity on you. And they said that to me or other people, right? And I was just like, well, that makes me feel like, whether that person can see it or they're just making shit up. If they're making shit up, which is also plausible, possible. Or even or they believe it, then I'm like, okay, well, I got this invisible thing on me. Well, how do I get it off? Like, you know what I mean? Is this the reason why I'm grumpy? Like, so how do I cast it out?
Well, again, we have dominion. You see, this is the thing. Like, you got to understand who you are. So, like, if you go back to Genesis, we're made in the likeness of God. We have jurisdiction over the land, sea, and air, and that's all there is in this little matrix thing. Those are the only jurisdictions. So if you have dominion in those, you can cast them out. You can cast them out in the name of Christ. We're told to use his name because he overcame everything. So, if you read Ephesians 6, it goes pretty much into that whole spiritual battle thing and describes the armor and all that.
Awesome. Okay. I will read that. I'm just going through my notes here because there's so many things I want to ask you. You know anything about the cube of Saturn?
No.
Okay, we won't go into that then. But I know a bit of a bit, but it's basically like the idea is that the Satanist Luciferians have the cube of Saturn. It's all over the planet, two of these certain spots. It's a black cube of Saturn, and they worship Kronos, the god of time, and that's kind of like the origin of their religion, and it kind of gets into some weird stuff. I wasn't sure if you kind of come across that in your study, so I'm looking to learn a little bit more about that. So if anybody out there knows an expert in that idea, then let me know. And like, you also, from the top, right, when you graduate university, you've got a square black cap, so there's that symbolism everywhere. So I'll skip that one and go into well, there's two I want to go into. So let's just go with this one. It's a little bit of a change because one of them is like, trying to understand like these entities and where we're going. But the other side is like the life side of like how do we friggin' live our lives? Like with all this fear and all this madness and all this uncertainty and chaos, like just even for me and my family, wanting to keep them safe and looking at how to make a living, doing something of service to other people, but then navigating like, oh, are we going to get this now financial crash? Are they going to, in Canada with all the ridiculous rules they had, like all these different hazards out there, it can be stressful. And so on one side, people are like, you're kind of one of those guys. I saw you when we were working on something else. It's like, how do you feel? And you're like, I feel fine. So, working into that state of, I guess, full full faith and full surrender when it just feels like the whole world's like, especially in Canada, it seems like it's moving into this communist state. And I don't see any evidence yet that these guys aren't going to get a lot further. You know what I mean? Like Canada hasn't really resisted too much. I'm still hopeful and I still have faith, but I was like, holy smokes, like you'd hope people wake up a little bit sooner. So
well, they're going to wake up when they wake up. And, I've been in this 20 years and I've seen more people wake up in the last 6 months than, 15 years before that. So it's happening. And of course they have their agenda. They're hell bent on Lucifer becoming God, period. But it's not going to happen. And so, I have a complete belief in that, partly because I went through kind of a dark period of years where, I couldn't see the end. And, I came out victorious, like just blew the doors out of that court when I left, but they had me and there was no end to it. Like there was no, oh yeah, you're going to be in here for 60 days. They picked me up and held me without bail. I could have been in there for years. I could still be in there, literally, like, and who's going to get me out? But it didn't happen. So that was their plan. They put me in harm's way at least twice that I could definitely pick it out, and nothing happened.
Like they tried to make you go into a cell with like a sketchy person or something.
Oh yeah.
Oh geez. And then the person didn't do anything?
No, like they put me with a guy who never has a roommate. And, the first night he got up in the morning and, he was looking at me like he wanted to kill me because I snore. And that's day one. And but by the
laughing when I'm just like, it's funny that you're out now. Probably not funny at the time.
Well, you don't know what to expect. I'm not a fearful person, but I'm not a coward. I'm not a fighter either by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not afraid of things. But by the time the day went on, he liked sports and I did, and nobody else in the whole pod was really into sports. So we just hit it off. And then they changed his meds to try and make him go off. And he came to me, he says, Cal, I'm snapping at you. And I don't know why. I said, did they change your meds? And he goes, yeah, they did. I can,
Jeez.
And they put and when I was in the other jail, they put a racist in there. And this guy was lifting the leg weights with his arms. Like this guy was big. And I know when somebody's a real strong racist around me, like you can just tell. And that was on purpose. And they moved the one real tough black guy. He seemed really nice to me, but apparently on the street, he's like, just that guy is like, nobody messes with him. He didn't carry himself that way, but guys told me out in the street, yeah, like like nobody messes with that guy. So they moved him out, and another black guy. So there was just me and one other guy who was quite tall and skinny, and he was Muslim and just kind of did his prayers and stuff. So he was pretty non-threatening. And then they moved these other guys in. And this is because my cellmate was challenged, and he was supposed to fight a guy from the gang. There's the gang guys kind of hang together. He was supposed to fight one of those guys, and he says, or you got to check off. It's called check off. Like you go to another pod, but the minute you check off and go to another pod, everybody knows there's a problem with you, right? So your life is just miserable. And he started packing his stuff. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm not going to fight that guy, so I'm checking off. I said, you don't have to do that. And he's like, what? I said, well, just, I'll pray and we'll just stop that. I can see the spirit. It sits right under the stairs, and that's where they all congregate. I can see it, right? Not see it, but I can sense that it's there. I know that that's what's driving this. So I said, you just have to, just agree with me and I'll put a stop to it. Sure enough, stopped it. And the pod started to become, everybody was happy and everybody started to relax. And the whole place was like almost fun to be there. And of course, the guards are watching everything like, this isn't working. So then they moved, they made this move and brought this racist in. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So now I have to kind of, and day one, he came with a guy with him, a small guy, and he started a fight first breakfast. And for no reason, as far as I could tell. He just saw a guy across the thing and ran over there and started pounding him. I'm like, what is this? And so he was locked up for a while, but the big guy was still around, and he started hanging around with the gang members and biker, all that whole type of people. And so now I got to kind of sit with my back to the walls and without making it look like I am and that kind of thing, but not allowing anybody behind me. And I was pretty adept at that. But yeah, they put me in danger. So I've been through this and I got through unscathed. So, and I came out victorious. And we're all going to come out of this victorious. They're trying to do their thing, but it's not working. As you can see, the whole thing in Ottawa, they passed this act supposedly, and I don't think they actually got it passed. And they started the violence early in order to justify and get the act through. Well, the crowd didn't bite. There was a little bit of pushing and shoving, but they never got the mob thing happening. And crowds are easy to turn, and they didn't, so they had to back out of that whole thing because there was no justification for it. Yeah, so you can see everything they do is falling apart. Let's freeze the bank accounts. People started pulling money out. Oh, well, that's not gonna whoa. So yeah, we'll get through this.
Well, that story, it kind of made me feel like that's kind of what everyone's going through, and there will be an other side to this if you haven't had that direct experience. So sometimes you just need to persevere. I can definitely see it falling apart, and I could also see where Klaus Schwab talks about friggin' cyber attack or whatever they have teed up. I just wonder, the time frame. How long am I going to have to endure this for, and how can I move forward with peace and fearlessness? What would you recommend for people? Because it's weird for me to look at this life, right? It says be in the world and not of it, right? Well, doing the podcast and before 3 years ago, I was getting 150,000 downloads a month. It was exploding, and that was nice. And right, there's a lot of hard work put into it. And then censorship to the point of getting a few hundred downloads. So if I had the idea that I was going to create a business or a life around it, they kind of squash that, right? I always think about how can I be of service to my fellow man and make a way to provide for my family in this scenario. And so when everything kind of gets squeezed so tight, that's why I think people compromise their integrity because they need to make a buck, right? I feel like a lot of people don't need to do that, right? It's like they need too much luxury, they need too much stuff, and there's nothing wrong with abundance and creating wealth and all that kind of stuff. As long as you're not sacrificing, I think that there's a balance where you can figure out who you are and you can make money in any capacity, entrepreneurship, working a job, working in trades, whatever you want to do that feels right and good for you. And you have enough to grow in this world. But when people either get greedy or that money gets taken away, that's why the cops are not all the cops. They had to take cops from all over Canada to go there because nobody wanted to do that. Or if you're a nurse or a doctor and you start to see something's wrong, you don't want to speak up because you're going to lose your license. They threaten you. So now all of a sudden your livelihood's gone. And so I guess how do we navigate this world where we do still need those dollars to pay for apples that we should just have with walking the path of what your purpose or creator would want for you?
Well, there's always a remedy, and everything gets taken care of. Especially if you believe that and actually pray into it with intention and faith. The Bible calls it faith. In jail, I just saw all that, and I was taken out of I had no choice. Nobody's paying my rent. It's like, I'm just pulled out of society, literally, and stuck in a room, and all my bills are still happening, and nobody even knows that I'm gone. Like it took 5 days before my daughters knew where their dad was. So I went through that, and on a small scale, and there was no end in sight. I got to tell people that, like, it was 60 days in hindsight, but I didn't know that at any point in time, and I wasn't backing down, and neither were they. We were in a like staring contest, chicken, or whatever you want to call it. They didn't want to let me go, and I wasn't gonna conform. So who's gonna blink? Then they finally got the trial going. It took them forever to get that to happen because they couldn't get jurisdiction, and they just railroaded it. But at the end, I'm walking out after the judge gives me a sentence. You now owe me $300 million. Oh, that didn't work. That's right. So all of their oppression and whatever whatever they were their whole agenda got undone at the last second. Boom, gone. Whoa. Okay, well, let's just leave that guy alone for the rest of his life. And that's what I got. Because everything backfired big time. Their whole idea was to make, maybe maybe even $100,000 at best off my whole incarceration, maybe more. I don't even know how they bill and all that for, incarceration and drives with the sheriffs and court time and all that comes off my trust thing. But they ended up owing me 300 million. I know it wasn't even in that scope that they could have possibly made. And we gave them the $300 million. All they had to do was let me go, but they didn't. No, we're going to have our cake and eat it too. You see? So all these things happened, but at the end, boom, they lost big time. And then the fallout from that, the amount of people that stepped down, from me trying to collect and then defaulting the queen, all of that stems from we're in charge here, and you're going to comply, and we're going to just push on you until you break. No, it didn't. It blew up in their face, and what we're facing now is a big blow up in their face because it's worldwide. And so you got to sort of trust that that's happening, and you can see it, but you just think that they're going to win in some way, and they're not. So they're going to push and push and push, and they're going to push harder because as they get desperate, just like any wild animal that's dying, they fight to the death. And so, yeah, it's going to look like that. But at the end, they're going to die. Like a chicken with his head cut off can run around, spray blood and all that. But eventually.
Well, it reminds me of the Bible verse, ye of little faith, right? And then I have also contemplated the war that we're in, and one of the firm reasons I believe we'll win is because these people literally are Satanists, and a lot of them have no soul. They sold their soul to the devil. And when we were talking about the demons earlier, I was going to say, like, maybe that's why they say I sign my soul to the devil, right? Yeah. And you hear Beyonce and other people saying, it's not me when I'm singing. It's almost that they have an ability to sign a contract where something can come in and control their life. And I don't think the demons want to be pop stars or something. It's just,
no, they do.
They do. Yeah. What? Explain yourself.
Well, the whole thing is about God. Like God in heaven, there's this constant worship, and there's this singing and all that. Oh, they want that. That's why they gravitate towards that. That's why, right. Anybody that gets into politics, like, I don't gravitate towards that because I don't want all that, like, attention. I gotta, I have quite a bit of attention, but I don't seek this. Like, but those that want that kind of worship, they gravitate towards pop star, rock star, politician, CEO of that. Like they gravitate towards that because they want that adoration.
Right. It's like false stars or false gods or false idols, right?
Yeah.
It's like all these and all the awards and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's kind of ridiculous. And so where I was going with it was the idea that yeah, these people literally sell their soul to the devil.
Yeah.
So that means they have no idea what God or spirit or creator is capable of. Right. You have no idea what's going to come back at you when you've removed yourself and you're only familiar with this dark side. You're not, familiar with like I don't know. To me, it's like the infinite power, but the cohesive power of people looking out for each other. Because if you're in a den of snakes and the only thing binding you together is threat, right? It's all these threat curses and sign your name here, or we're going to kill you and your family. Well, that versus people who are collectively coming together in a cooperative, cohesive, and then the last thing they want to do is battle. They want to find a peaceful revolution. How are you going to beat that? Right? It doesn't seem like you would want to go against that type of person, and they're forcing people to, right? It's not they're forcing people to take an action when this kind of could have gone slowly through the years, but it's really ramped up so people can now see the system for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming to an end. That's the thing. So, and they're getting desperate because they know their time is up. They know stuff that most of us don't. They know there's a time limit on this. They may not know the exact day, but they know like this is coming to an end. They can feel it. And the default is coming. And so they're desperately trying to win this chess game.
So what do you know what I wonder what Satan would have to achieve to win? Like I've heard of there's like something called the Book of Ra, which is interesting. I don't know if anything's legit in there, but it was super fascinating to listen to. It talked about to go to the next level, you had to be 50% positive, so of service to others, or 90% negative, so of service to self. And that's kind of and it also suggested that even the evil people are there, so you can make that free will choice to make good and evil because you're kind of a simulation. But what would Satan or Lucifer have to achieve in this to win this battle or this scenario that we're in?
I don't know. None of that's stated, and again, it's probably on purpose so that we don't know inside here what that takes. So we have to kind of just go in faith that just move towards it, and we'll hit it at some point. Like as far as us winning, him, I think by default, the systems and we're following those systems by default because we're born into it. So it's more about how many people come out or how many people he can contain inside of it, like keep them there.
Yeah. And then will he get, that's one of my fear with the needle, with the shot, is that you have to consent to it. And it's gene therapy. And one of that documentary, that EWARNON guy, he talked about how when God got really pissed in the past, when he came down, it was when they were messing with human genetics.
Mm-hmm.
And he isolated that in the Bible. It's like, that's when God real got pissed, when you started messing with human genetics. And that's what they're doing now. And there's been these theories, and this goes into this, they can't escape. So if we have the breath of life of God within us, these demons or disincarnates or Lucifer, whatever the heck they are, they're not going to get that passage out. So they want to be able to hijack us or take our stuff so they can boom back to the source.
Yeah. We can get out, not physically. Well, it's possible, maybe. Like it's hard to say what Enoch was doing, but if you read the book of Enoch, he was traveling.
He was the first. Was he the only one in the Bible, or I don't know about history, but the only one in the Bible that apparently didn't die a human death?
He was the first one. Yeah, he's the first one, and Elijah also didn't.
Oh, okay.
He was taken up in some kind of whirlwind thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on, and you can get quite a bit of insight, but it doesn't give you the details. And when I see what happened in Job, I see why we don't get the details, because it has to be fair for Satan as well. So there's rules of engagement, and there's rules on how much knowledge we can have. We can't have no knowledge, otherwise we're doomed. So that's why the Bible, if you just look at it, yeah, it's been altered and changed, but those would have been by agreement, and there would be still enough in there to get to the truth and be functional.
And you recommend the 1611 King James Bible because the words are a little bit different. And this is one of the discussions with my friend. And I was like, look, they just apparently this is the one. And when I read it, it is like reading code. It's a totally different thing. It's not, it's just very different. I can understand it, but it's a whole nother thing.
It is. When you start to read it, you can sense there's something going on there. So yeah, it's the same words as the authorized King James Version, but the spellings and letters, they switch some letters in the alphabet.
Right. And so have you ever heard about, I think I might have asked you this on a previous show, but have you heard about the moon matrix theory? This one scared the shit out of him. This came from out of Romley Stewart's channels, which made it worse because it gave me this whole
and it has that music like
yeah. And it's I think it's like Justinian banking, and so it goes in and it talks about old language and stuff like that. But it basically said, and I'd heard this from other people before, that the moon is a false light. So when we die, we would go back to the source, but it got shipped in, so we get this fake light. So we think that we're going home, but it's this reincarnation device, this like galactic reincarnation device. You ever hear about that? What do you think about that one?
I mean, I've heard stories like that, but
that, to me, I friggin' do not like that one. I hate those ones.
No. I mean, the Bible says that God made the moon, a light for the night, and so what it actually is, who knows? But it's the thing about all this, all these stories, etc. They may be true, but they also could be just another way of getting you into fear, which is, I can't see because I've traveled myself, like, out of body experiences, and I didn't believe in that stuff. Not really. I mean, I wasn't like dead against it, but I had never experienced it. So I'm like, well, I don't know what's happening with these people. Maybe they're, it's just happening in their mind or whatever. But I had an experience. So I was out of here. So I know, like, you can't set up something that's going to block that. Like it's not blockable. If I can't explain it to you because it's experiential, but it's not happening. No, like it's God is way bigger than Lucifer is. And that's the whole problem. So everything has to be done fairly, but there's a lot of lies and deceptions to keep you in that state of fear.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I'd love for you to touch on that. It's just like removing fear completely, or even like a strategy for that, because I'll catch myself in cycles. One of the things I'll share with my clients is just that, it's just to catch yourself in the emotion. So, because right now everything coming from the screen is frightening. If you were Mennonite, I know this, my uncle has a family of his partner way out in what's that island in Vancouver that's not Vancouver, and it's higher up, it's northeast, it's like starts with a G, like, I'm talking about, like,
Haida.
Yes, that's a strange name. Out there, saw these pictures. They've got little excavator, right, and just the most magical sunset on the ocean coast, and I don't really want to live that lifestyle per se, but it sounds pretty good right now. But those people with no TV and maybe a bit of radio for 2 years have just been so chill. They haven't had any of this nonsense. There's no fear coming in from anything right now. They're not going to be worried about Ukraine. They're not going to be worried about the bank crowd. Not going to be worried. They haven't had any. So what the hell is the point of me? I want to get out of this simulation as much as I can, but it seems like I've chosen a field of work where I'm seeking knowledge and I'm seeking discernment and truth and journalism and things like that. So I'm drawn into this bucket, and it still affects me, right? It's like mental nutriments. It can't not affect me, whether true or not. Like if I say, don't imagine Donald Trump, right? Or don't imagine President Biden, either of them with poop on their head, depending on which one you like, your mind has to go do that. And so I wonder if there's a way that you would suggest for people to break that fear paradigm, because obviously that's what they tried to do with you. That would be horrible. Like you said, people can't imagine, and I'm pretty good at it, so people can imagine, but I like really put myself in your shoes when 60 days, 20 days of when am I getting out? You can only go see the court, and they're giving you no time. And then 30 days for that's going to feel like an eternity.
It is.
Right. And then now, while you're down in this like dungeon of hell, so to speak, right? Then they're trying to throw threats your way that are actual physical reality threats, you know? You're like, holy crap, that's another. So what else are they going to throw at me?
Yeah.
And so I just be curious your thoughts of the average Joe just accepting, you know, some people don't want to lose their income. They don't want to lose their house. They don't want to lose their bank account. They don't want to lose, they don't want food shortage or whatever. And I kind of, you know, played that one out in my mind. I was like, I'm just going to go to Kimberley, British Columbia, where they need to count deer as people. There's so many friggin' deer in Kimberley, British Columbia. They're never going to go hungry. I'm skateboarding and there's 2 deer on top, just literally watching all of us skate. I was like, is this odd to know? Like, this is amazing, you know, on the front lawns. And so there's food everywhere. You know, for the vegans, I'm sure we'll grow some trees too, but you know, there's meat too. So anyway, so can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a Bible verse that says, bring every thought into captivity. So you can take those thoughts captive. And it's practical. It's practical stuff. Like it tells you how to do that. You know, like it doesn't tell you how to do it, but it tells you you can do that. So when those thoughts come, you can just say, no, I'm not accepting that thought, and it has to go. It's like it's a contract. Like literally, you buy into that suggestion, and almost all their suggestions are along the fear base. You know, get you into a fear situation because you're ineffective if you're fearful. Like there's just no way and you probably know this better than I. You go into that fear state, nothing works. Like you're kind of ineffective. So you want to stay out of fear. The Bible says, "Fear not," 365 times. That's 1 per day. So, and when it says "fear not," it means there is something that you're looking at that's supposed to be fearful. Otherwise, why would it say that? So like, it's not about, don't fear something while you're at the beach. It's like, no, you're going to see stuff, but don't buy in. Like, don't go into fear.
It even talks about Satan, like fear not Satan's army or Satan's dominions, which is everywhere. It's almost our whole reality. And I thought about, well, I've been safe so far, you know, but it's all this projected potential fears that sometimes get the better of me. And like, no.
But the thing is, there's another story in the Bible where the Israelites were way outnumbered. And the prophet, I think it was Elijah or Elisha, was standing, what are we going to do? We're outnumbered, tens of thousands to 1. And he says, well, those that are with us are more than those that are with them. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he said, God, open his eyes so he can see. And he saw in the heavenly realms. Now, remember, when Lucifer fell, 1/3 of the angels went with him. That's all it's here. Meaning 2/3 didn't come here. So they're outnumbered 2 to 1 if no more angels were created. And there's no evidence whether that creation keeps going on, but at least 2 to 1. So all of their mechanisms and all the spiritual help that they've got is outnumbered. We just have to get them in here, and they can only come it through legally. Like, they won't break the rules. These ones in here, they'll break the rules all the time. And so once this hits a certain point and there's a default, they're coming in, period. And the ones on the ground know it. So they're trying to keep you in that state where you don't believe any of this stuff, and you go into fear. We need to stand up and continue to live and to create a parallel system and make their system redundant and just ignore them.
That's amazing. Well, I got tingles when you said the 2/3, and I was like, oh yeah. Why do you think they always have to have armor? Is there a way that you said angels were created? Did they start as humans like us? Because we're definitely in this. For whatever reason, we're in the confusion, right? I think in the Bible talks about the veil. It also talks about the harvest. Any of those things linked? Like when I share about that, what's your understanding of those ideas?
Yeah, there's a harvest coming, and that's when God wins. And there's going to be probably a last minute things. He's given a few parables where it's at the last minute, the feast is ready, nobody's coming, and then all the street people come in. And so, yeah, it's a 2/3 to 1/3, and and the angels were made before man. So like angels existed. So Lucifer existed before man, because there's a discussion, like I said, in Genesis 1, and it's most likely with Lucifer and to make man. So they pre-existed. Man, man, Adam, the DNA of Adam is fairly recent as far as everything that's gone on in this thing.
Was it the book of Enoch where it talks about Adam getting created, and then either he made a mistake or he was lonely, and then there was the girl, Eve got created.
Yeah.
There's some sort of, I think it was the book of Enoch, told me a news story I didn't think about. It was just like they forgave a mistake and then made someone else or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember that.
I go through so much information, so I just thought it because it was like, wait, what? I was like, I never heard that one before, something. But it's a very fascinating book, the book of Enoch, and it talks about the 1,000 years, and it talks about the angels and the watchers. What's the difference between an angel and a watcher?
I think watchers are angels. I think it's more what their duty is. So they were sent to watch here, I guess, to witness. In my opinion, it's hard to tell, but in my opinion, to witness this, what man does as far as following Lucifer or following God, to make sure that everything's happening. But the first set of watchers interbred, and that caused all kinds of problems. So that was the first genetic manipulation, and God was not pleased with it, and that's when the flood happened, and the whole Noah story. So this was just prior to Noah.
And that one, but the genetics part, right? That's when God was pissed, and so he flooded the earth, and then he did that, but then he gave us the rainbow, saying, "I will never flood the earth again."
Yeah. So the next one, that it won't be a flood, but there's another judgment coming, because they're manipulating the DNA again, which is totally unfair, because they're trying to get part of our DNA is that connection to God, and so they're trying to manipulate that, so we lose that connection. And that's not fair in the claim thing, like claiming to be God. Well, you can't manipulate it to that level. There's a line that they're crossing right now that is not going to be acceptable.
That's good to hear, because we're definitely coming to the end times of what is possible. There's the I think he's Klaus Schwab's head scientist or something like that, and there's like an 8-minute clip of him now online where it shows his talks, and basically saying like the era of free choice and free will is over, because we can hack you and program you and do whatever. And it looks like if people are going to quote unquote choose Lucifer in the scenario, the shot is genetic altercation. You have to accept it. Then you don't know what kind of level of science, and you're accepting. Do you think if people continue to accept those shots and are completely lost, can they still be saved, at least at a soul level, or if not a physical? Because the thing is, we all die, right? It's just like, but how we die and who we are, right? Whether you die from the shot or you die from COVID or you die from any, you're going to die. Right. It's just, but what choices are you making? But a lot of the people who are taking these things, they have no idea. They're just trying to exist. They have to ignore a lot of evidence, and they have to be really set in their ways. But there's a lot of people who are just, I'm doing it because of my grandma for good reasons. And that's what pisses me off the most, is they use people's good nature against them.
Yeah, they do. And that again, going back to that whole thing, using God against himself, really. And so they're manipulating God in a smaller version. So, but part of contract law is you have to give full disclosure. Otherwise the contract is void, from the beginning. So you can't hold somebody to a fraudulent contract. So, and like you said, there's going to be some people who didn't know anything. There's some people who have been told. And so, where that line is, that's up to God to sort all that out. But because there's some willful ignorance, in my opinion, like they've been told, they know, and they're just like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to follow this. So people have their, choices.
Mm-hmm. Well, Cal, I'll talk to you all day. I won't take too much more time. I know you're always on interviews. You're working hard. I invite people to check out InPowerMovement. So when you think those notice of liabilities, I guess you should give us an Empower update for people who do that. There's a lot of great information. The NOLs are great. I think learning the law is so important. It's not boring like you would imagine, like going to law school. It's very exciting. It's a very spiritual topic. And, you learn a little about yourself and you learn about how this system works. And I feel like it's a responsibility people should take. It's
Yeah.
like something like said, like it should be mandatory education, right? That's hidden. So since it's not out there, I need to take it upon myself to educate myself so that maybe I'm educating my daughter or her friends or whatever. You have to know it. It's like, don't pass go, don't collect 200 and just start, getting one here and there. You don't have to go crazy with it. And over time, you're going to understand it more. And there's a lot more, right? This COVID thing has created all these groups. The Choose Freedom Law Summit group, Empower movement was way before us. We came to you for help because all these people began to search. And so you've got these powerful notice of liabilities, which have worked. And now people are saying, okay, well, since this is this deceptive game where they have all these checks and balances in front of them, well, we're going to start to actively look for these cracks in the armor to hold them accountable, because what they're doing is mother effing illegal. And they're causing harm.
Yeah.
They should be held accountable. How are they not? So
Right.
we want to hold them accountable the right way, right?
Yeah. And get them in the default situation so that that case is over, that underlying case is adjudicated and done, and we move on from this in the way we were designed, the way the whole planet, if we're still here, was designed. Not this imposed systems of belief and in money and countries and separation and all that. Like, we're a flocking species, and they've been trying to keep us separate. So yeah, it's all very exciting, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of years. To it's going to be bumpy, no doubt about it, but we are going to come out, and we're going to come out big time victorious. Not oh, I barely made it out of there. It's going to be it's going to be quite spectacular in some way, just like a birth is. Like when you had your daughter, there was a lot of uncomfortableness especially for your wife, and maybe you were as well as the husband. Sometimes it's like that. And then when labor comes, it's like turmoil. It's like war. Like there's blood and guts and yelling, and in most cases, and then there's a new life, and the baby does not know. You got to understand that whole childbirth thing. The baby is born in that environment in the womb. It does not know that there's anything outside, even though it can hear and feel stuff. It would take it as part of this thing that's in front of me. That's what's making that noise. I can hear something and I can feel something, but it doesn't know that there's an outside, there's an outside environment. It has no context for it. So when it's born, all of a sudden, I hear a noise. What's that screaming noise? Oh, it's coming out of me. None of that happened before. And what's this stuff going in me, like air? Like, oh, it's all brand new, right? They had no idea that was coming. All they can feel is like, oh, it's nice and warm in here. And all of a sudden, hey, I'm being pushed around and shoved, and like, this is not comfortable. I'm being flipped, and now I'm have to go through this thing, and like, what is all this, right? And we're in that stage where it seems really tumultuous, and it is, but it's the birth process to get to the new thing. And we have no context of what it is. Like, we can't see it from in here, because we were all born in here. We don't know what is outside of here.
That's a great analogy. Yep, I agree with that. I feel like I'm being tossed, turned around, no certainty. Well, Cal, this has been great, man. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Where should people, if they want to learn more? I know you do a lot of interviews. I don't know if Empower lists them all everywhere, or
Yeah.
I know a lot of people just enjoy your work and your philosophy and your knowledge. So where do they go?
Well, we have all our stuff at InPowerMovement.com, and most of the interviews are posted there. And then we have some, other training material and stuff to look at, to study law, law merchant and contracts and all that. And there's some spiritual stuff there as well. And so it's, yeah, you can, whatever sort of floats your boat, you can kind of get something. A lot of people have, it's made an impact in their life, even just the small stuff that we have out there. And they do write in and say, my whole perspective has changed and my life is changing, and in a positive way. And so it's all good.
I believe it. Yeah, I remember the beginning of my law journey. I feel a lot more confident in a lot of areas, and I think a lot of fear comes from just lack of knowledge, right? So that's it. A lot. If you've never camped before, you're going to be afraid. But if you're an outdoorsman, you can survive whatever. You have that knowledge, and so it's just upon us to have that accountability to grow up into the knowledge that we need to get to that next level. And so that's a part of it.
Yeah.
So InPowerMovement.com.
Yeah.
All right. Cool, Cal. Anything else? Right. Anything you wish that I asked or you want to talk about? You want to leave the listeners with? Favorite Bible verse? What's your favorite one? You have one?
Yeah, I do. Actually, it's Romans 8. I can't remember the exact verse, but it says that, talking about childbirth, that the creation is earnestly waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. So it's like in childbirth, waiting for us to do something. And that is, we have to participate in this. Like, we actually have to intend to follow God or do whatever you're called to do against the system. And we have to actually do stuff. So it's waiting for us to manifest.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know where the heck this could have been from, the Bible, the book of Enoch, listening, but I don't know if there's a Bible verse that says that, like, in the end times, the whole goal is to do every single thing that you can to, kind of not so much like prevent or fight you, but like save children, like to work on God's behalf, because we do have children being harmed right now in massive ways, in numerous ways, people being harmed. Like, this is a time to take action as much as you can. And you might not know, I feel like for me, sometimes I don't know how to be effective. Just do what you can. And just keep praying. If everybody just does what they can, keep praying in their own field, they're going to figure out what that next level is. Like last year, I didn't feel like I did anything. And then the Law Summit was something that helped a lot of people. But that kind of came naturally, right? So, I was like, what am I doing? I want to do something more. And so if we can all just chip in our little bit and just have that open heart, that, like it was the truckers convoy, just to see all these good people, they would give you their shirt off their back, right? And these are the people we're going to build another solution with more and better knowledge. So it's like, oh, they've shut out all the money, all that stuff. It's like, cool. Well, actually, one of us has a whole bunch of land, and we're connected this certain way. We got all the food we need, right? Just come here. We'll build you a structure, right? It's like the Mennonites to build you like a structure in half an hour. It's better than any Mattamy home, and that's going to stand forever. So that's a community that we're going to choose to be a part of when we let go of fear, and we have to let go of that system, right? It's like, oh, well, now I need another shot to be in the system. Oh, now I need this digital thing. Oh, now I need a stamp on my forehead, right? It's just like, just cut wherever you are now, just cut ties with it. And I think if you do it early enough, you can definitely be accepted or forgiven for the mistakes you've made. And I think, myself, I make mistakes always, and I just try to learn from them and ask for forgiveness, and then try to make a better choice next time. But
exactly. Yep. That's the key to this. Just get moving, do something, and one thing will lead to the next. And I've just seen that over and over. But don't get stuck. Don't go into fear. Stay out of fear. Move towards unconditional love, which is a pretty high bar. But like, get out of fear. Like, you gotta. Even if you have to use anger for a short period of time, you got to get out of fear.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, Cal.
All right.
I'll let you go for real.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day, man. Always great to chat with you. Make sure to check out Cal's work. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Peace.
Peace.